Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin our conversation today uh, by looking at the sentiment by the late Martin Luther. He said that he is looking for a time, for a day, whereby people will not be judged by by their color, but by the content of the but they'll be judged by their content. And so today I want to look at racism, and we are capitalizing on what is happening today, the 21st of March. It is an international day whereby it is celebrated and looked at for the purpose of eliminating racism and discrimination in the world. And so this came as a result of a number of things that were happening. And on the 26th of October, the year 1966, the UN, and that's the UNESCO General Assembly, passed a resolution that the 21st of March of every year shall be an international day for elimination of racial discrimination. Remember, in the year 1960, 69 people who were protesting against the lethal and ruthless regime, the apartheid, had shot them and killed them in a broad daylight. And so this did not augur well with the world, and that kind of agitation began to arise and to spring. I want us to interact with this because there are people who are indeed victim of racism, and it is not a problem that is exclusively of a particular country. Rather, this is a challenge that that most, or rather the whole entire world faces this challenge of racism, or rather discrimination, if you like, biasness. So it is not exclusive to particular countries, as much as those particular countries may be practicing that, but this is a challenge that is facing the entire world. And so because of this, there are people, I'm sure perhaps you've met, who are having mental challenges because as a result of discrimination. There are other who are struggling with their identity issues because of this bigotry of racism. And probably there are others who have just given up in life, who look at life as a life that is not equitable, where there is lack of equality and equity as a result of serious biasness and discrimination. And of course, there are also people who probably might have decided even to end their life by committing suicide as a result of the challenges of discrimination and racism. I'm talking about this because these are things that all of us we see, perhaps even on our television or different media platform, and also as a minister of the gospel, and as a church leader, many of these cases really come on my way, and at times I really have to devote myself in trying to sort out the challenges. And so this is indeed a serious challenge, and this is something that I think the UN, the UNESCO, really was within the right to have this day recognized so that this issue can be dealt with. This is because, as I've been mentioning on this platform, the world has become global. The world has become a village, There is no way you can say because you come from a particular part of the world, then you do not want to interact with other part of the world, either because of such biasness or discrimination. That in itself is limiting, and it suggests a lot where you are concerned. And so, what is racism? To start to per se, so that we can continue to interact with this conversation. The process. This is the process, and this is I checked this in the Australian Human Rights Commission, who described racism as the process by which system and policies, actions and attitudes create unequitable opportunities and outcomes for people based on their race. And so that is the Australian Human Rights Commission. And also the American Psychological Association, they also look at racism as a form of prejudice that assumes that the members of racial categories have distinctive characteristics, and that these differences result in some racial groups being inferior to others. Distinctive characteristics. Let us keep that in mind. And also in that process, I came to one Professor Condola Bina, who says that racism has been likened to a virus that mutates, taking on different forms as it adapts to a changing environment. That suggests that it is indeed a challenge to deal with, and because of its ability to mutate depending with the environment, then at times it can be really tricky to deal with it. And so just looking at this issue of racism and biasness and discrimination, about three things I would want to talk about in a way of trying to interrogate this subject. Number one has to do with explicit and inexplicit. And this is how this behavior and this attitude has always manifested. In other words, something that is explicit is something that is very clear. It's very clear, you can spot it. Whether they are doing it through words, you can see they are using people use particular certain words that are belittling, that are giving less value to people, either be basing on their where they belong, their race, their group, their ethnicity. And so sometimes it can be very explicit, meaning it can be very clear and it can be spotted. And also it can be very inexplicit, meaning it cannot be that clear. That means you need really to scrutinize properly, and you need another eye to look into it and to interpret and see that here somebody is trying to propagate racism in a tricky way. And so we need to be very careful, because and actually Professor Condola talks about this, because he says because the normal way, the explicit way of carrying on with the behavior and the attitude of racism and biasness has been over time identified and so condemned. And because of that, nowadays in most of the places you realize that racism takes that kind of inexplicit kind of propagation, so that sometimes it becomes difficult for somebody to spot it and to put you on the spot. And the other thing that and actually when we talk about explicit and inexplicit, in other words, this kind of discrimination can be very direct and can be very indirect, whereby somebody can choose just to give you an attitude because of your skin color, and it can directly tell you that, or somebody may just decide to do that indirectly by behaving in a certain way that will suggest that indeed your skin color is not favorable in their own judgment. And number two, I want to look at systematic and systemic. And these are the kind of the methods and approaches that we see this kind of bigotry of racism takes, and really people take advantage of it. So racism can take that approach of that systematic approach, in the sense that it is very systematic. It's in the system, and also very methodological in terms of approach and practice. This suggests that there is a certain method that is used to propagate and to ensure that this issue is spreading. And so it capitalizes and takes a certain form, certain system. And for example, we may find if a company is recruiting people, the recruiting process may be biased in terms of the kind of the method they have used to recruit a particular talent. It's bias. So they already know the kind of the person they want and the kind of the person they do not want. And on this can be looked against systemic, whereby systemic, we are looking at the entire system, in terms of looking at the entire of that system, and how they behave and how they conduct themselves. The characteristics consisting of racism entirely. For example, now when you look at the issue of recruiting, you find when you look at the kind of the policies that has been put in place or enacted, they are suggestive, they are segregative. The kind of the laws even countries enact, sometimes they look like they're safeguarding what their interest, but in real sense they are indirectly using the advantage of system, in terms of the entire system, to lock out other people, and locking out on the basis of either their religion, the culture, the color, or any other thing. And so racism can take that approach of either systematic or systemic, and that is very serious, and is something that we need to look at it, and to need to be careful about it. Even for example, in school, you may find if probably your child can be trivialized and become victimized, not necessarily because the child was wrong, but because maybe a teacher felt that the child come from a different group, or because of any other reason. And so that in itself becomes a problem, and it can limit this child. It can really frustrate this child. The child can ask himself or herself many questions that sometimes really they wonder what is happening. And also the other thing I think that also we see coming up is the aspect of normalization of racism, whereby now, because it is there, it has been normalized, it's part of our culture. It is okay for you to behave in such a manner and look at others in that prejudice manner. You see, when we reach in a certain place, it means really there is a problem, and a lot needs to be done. Now, leaders need to arise and ensure that they are speaking against this, and they are enacting even laws and policies that will change this and encourage inclusivity where everybody is on board and on a very same level ground, so that others don't feel superior than others. You know, they're just people, when they look at you, they feel they're so superior than others. And they think, and that's why you'll find there are those who are, yes, educated, but because of biasness and discrimination, they are treated as illiterate, and they are not given an opportunity because the laws and the policies are not allowing that. And when you go in an institution, or you go when you're seeking even for a job or any other thing, it is not allowing. So you find sometimes the behavior and the culture of a given institution, it is wanting. Yeah, it is wanting. Sometimes you just walk, you get in an institution, and you see even the attitude and the behavior that is there, it is very wanting. In a sense, you ask yourself, what is happening? Yeah, and I wonder, why would people just look at others as inferior, and why would others look and think they are more superior than the others? We are all equal, and everybody needs to be given equal opportunity and equal chance, so that they can get and do their best in life. So as we even celebrate and remember this day of 21st of March, really, I think to some extent the world might have made some good steps where fighting against and condemning racism is concerned. But it appears also there is a sense in which there is a fallback, where people again are sliding into it in a bigger way. Yeah, where people are sliding in it in a bigger way, and really this needs to be interrogated. Yeah, there are some countries, they really need to look even at their police, and a lot of reforms is needed, because when you look at how they do their policing, and you can identify there is a certain method within their system that is indeed that is in a sense prejudicing others and looking at others and treating others in a way that is not right. And so, for example, bodies such as police, because there's some countries that will use police to do this, that needs to be looked into. The issue, even when it come even to companies and institutions, and even when we come to individuals as leaders, you may just find a leader who hate other people, who hate other group of people, other religion, and so they would want to really ensure that this becomes contagious, and everybody begins, before you realize, everybody begins to live that kind of a lifestyle. And I don't think in a modern world really that has a place, unfortunately. It is unfortunate. It is just a time that really people need to appreciate that we are one. Don't treat others, don't give others special preferential treatment on the basis of their culture, their language, ethnicity, and their skin color. That is wrong, and that has to change. I know some of the people, they do it even unconsciously, and that has to be pointed out. Treat everybody equal. Look at everybody the same. And I know some, even for example, for me, like a church minister, you will go in some other part of the world, you will go in a church, you will find people are singing, they are praising the Lord. When you are in church, their attitude is different. But once you step outside that premises, that auditorium, everything changes. The attitude, the approach, and they look at you from very different perspective. And sometimes you wonder, if you're meeting with these people every day in church, then why is it not changing? I believe the gospel of Jesus Christ is there to transform us if we are at all receptive to it. It is there to transform us and to make us better. So I don't believe it is right for people to be discriminated, segregated, basing on things such as color, skin, language, race, nationality. This has to stop. The world is a village. You don't know where you will be tomorrow, and you don't know where your generation will be tomorrow. So treat others as you would want yourself, your generation to be treated. And we have to really condemn this issue of racism and segregation. And not just say you need to condemn it, it begins with you as a person. You have to live and challenge it and be different. And if you are a leader, you have an opportunity to lead, then lead in an appropriate way. Condemn it and seek to push policies and laws that really ensures everybody has a clean and same ground of playing. And this will be very good, and this will really help many other people, because there are people who are suffering. There are people who feel they can do better, but because of the system and because of this issue of discrimination, they are rendered, they are hopeless, and they cannot bring the best out of themselves. And this issue is very tricky. And what I talked about, especially the systematic and systemic, it is difficult to detect it. It hides, and pulling it out, really, it needs a lot of energy and a lot of strength. So a lot has to be done. A lot has to be done. And for you who is propagating discrimination and racism and biasness, you are living in an old, even I don't think people who lived in old age, really, you don't even deserve to be part of the old age. You really need to, you are under that, because that has no space in the today's world. That has no space in today's world. And to you parents, I know you could be doing it cautiously or uncautiously. You use very bad word against other race, against other languages and ethnicity, and your children are picking these words. And before you realize, they will start using them in schools, emitting them on other pupils, students. Before you realize, you have nurtured somebody who has a lot of hate towards others because they come from different groups or because they're minorities. That has to be condemned. Let me ask a question, by the way, and is it by design or is it by coincidence? Just to see what I'm trying to talk about. I was reading a report, and it was suggesting in US, most of the US prison, most of the people who are there, they are African American, the Black Americans. Why is that the case? Those are not the only people who lives in America. Why is that the case? Is it has to do with opportunities? Is it their own fault? Of course, this really is a complex question. But whether you agree with me or not, this goes beyond just individual misbehavior and upbringing. It has also to do with the way systems have been designed and the ways things are made. So as by the time you realize, they at the end of the day know this will be the end product. And so countries also need to be very intentional when they want to deal with this issue of racism. I know I've taken a lot of